Hey, everyone. I never thought I'd be one of those people, pouring my story out on the internet, but here we are. I guess I just need to get this off my chest. For context, my name is Jake. I'm 39, a regular guy, nothing special, just a hard worker who always put my family first. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 14 years. We had a beautiful daughter, Lily, who just turned 12. If you asked me a year ago, I would have told you we were a happy, stable family. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but who doesn't? Looking back, the signs were there. The late nights at work, the sudden obsession with her phone, the way she'd roll away from me in bed when I tried to touch her. I chalked it up to stress, maybe just a rough patch. I trusted her. She was my wife, the mother of my kid. I never thought I had a reason to doubt her. Until the night that changed everything. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had just gotten home from work, exhausted like always. I stopped by the fridge, grabbed a beer, and was about to settle into my usual routine when I noticed something odd. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't too unusual. She often ran errands or picked up Lily from her friend's house. But then, a text came in from my buddy, Mark. Hey, man. Thought I saw Sarah's car near that cheap motel off Route 9. Probably just someone with the same car, but figured I'd mention it. My stomach dropped. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Sarah wouldn't do that to me. To us. But something in me, a gut feeling I couldn't shake, told me to check it out. So, I did. And what I saw. It shattered everything I thought I knew. I sat in my truck outside that rundown motel off Route 9, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself over and over that Mark had to be wrong, that there had to be some reasonable explanation. But the moment I saw Sarah's car in the parking lot, my stomach turned to stone. I killed the engine and just sat there, staring at her silver SUV parked crookedly near the side entrance. The front bumper was scratched up, something she hadn't mentioned. My mind raced with excuses she might give. Maybe she had a work event nearby. Maybe she had a friend in town. Maybe she had a damn reason for being here that wouldn't destroy me. I don't even know how long I sat there, trying to convince myself I wasn't about to have my entire world torn apart. Then, I saw her. The motel door swung open, and out she stepped, laughing at something he had said. Some guy, mid-40s, tall, wearing a leather jacket like he thought he was some badass from an action movie. He had a cocky smirk on his face, the kind of look that made my blood boil. He turned to Sarah, ran a hand through his hair, and then he kissed her. Right there. In broad daylight. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sarah didn't pull away. She leaned into him, hands on his chest, smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in years. I could have gone blind from the rage that rushed through me. I wanted to throw the truck into gear, peel out, and knock that smug look off his face with my fist. But I didn't. I stayed. I watched. I needed to know. Sarah and this guy, this stranger, stood there for a minute, talking, completely oblivious to me sitting less than 50 feet away, my whole life crumbling in real time. Then, she got into her car and drove off. I didn't follow her. I followed him. It didn't take long to figure out who he was. His name was Ryan. Some divorced salesman who worked in the next town over. I found out he'd been seeing Sarah for months. She wasn't just cheating, she had a full-blown relationship with this guy. I don't know how I made it home that night without putting my fist through a wall. I walked through the front door like a ghost, barely noticing Lily sitting on the couch, watching TV. She looked up at me, and for a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Like she knew. But she didn't say anything. Just gave me a small, nervous smile before turning back to her show. I stood there for a long time, staring at my daughter, realizing that my whole life, my family, my marriage, was a goddamn lie. And the worst part? Sarah walked through the door an hour later like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled, and asked if I wanted her to heat up some leftovers. I stood there in the kitchen, watching Sarah move around like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just walked out of a motel room with another man. Like she hadn't just kissed him goodbye while I sat there, my world falling apart. She was humming. Humming. I don't know what was more infuriating, her cheating or the fact that she was so damn comfortable pretending everything was fine. "Did you eat yet?" she asked, opening the fridge. "There's still some pasta left from last night." I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. I just stared at her, gripping the counter to keep my hands from shaking. That's when she noticed something was off. She turned to face me, furrowing her brows. "Jake? You okay?" No. I wasn't. I should have confronted her right then and there. I should have thrown everything I saw in her face and demanded an explanation. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready. I needed time. Time to process. Time to plan. "Yeah," I finally muttered, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Just tired." She smiled, walking up to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Touching me. I nearly flinched. "Long day," she murmured, resting her head on my chest. I wanted to shove her away. I wanted to scream at her, ask her how the hell she could even look me in the eyes after what she'd just done. But instead, I just stood there, numb, letting her hold me like she actually gave a damn. "Yeah," I said again. She kissed my cheek, pulling away. "Go relax. I'll bring you a plate." I nodded and walked to the living room like a robot, my mind racing 1,000 miles an hour. As I sat on the couch, my eyes flicked to Lily, who was still watching TV. And that's when it hit me again. The look she gave me earlier. That hesitation, that nervous smile. Did she know? The thought made my stomach twist. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife, I was dealing with the possibility that my own daughter had been keeping it from me. I had to find out. I waited until Sarah was in the kitchen, then turned to Lily. "Hey, kiddo," I said, keeping my voice light. "How was your day?" She shrugged, eyes still on the screen. "Fine. Mom pick you up from school?" She nodded. I hesitated. "She, go anywhere after?" For a split second, there it was again, that flicker of something in her expression. A split-second pause before she said, "Just the store." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't want to believe it. But I wasn't an idiot. Lily was lying to me. She knew. And just like that, everything felt so much worse. Because now, I wasn't just betrayed by my wife. I was betrayed by my own daughter. I sat there, staring at Lily, my own daughter, as she focused on the TV like nothing had happened. But I saw it, that flicker of hesitation, the way she refused to meet my eyes. She knew. Maybe not everything, but something. And she was lying to me. That realization hit me harder than I expected. Sarah's betrayal was one thing, I could almost accept that, in a twisted way. But my own daughter? The person I had sworn to protect, the little girl I had tucked into bed every night, told stories to, hugged after every scraped knee. I felt sick. I wanted to press her, to demand she tell me what she knew. But I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't about to force my own daughter into a corner. Instead, I just nodded slowly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Just the store, huh?" She nodded again, still not looking at me. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. "All right," I said quietly. "Good to know." She didn't react. Just kept watching her show. But I saw the way her fingers tensed on the remote. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What the hell was I supposed to do now? If Lily knew about Sarah's affair, how long had she known? Weeks? Months? Had she overheard something? Had she seen something? And why the hell was she covering for her mother? Was she scared? Did she think telling me would break up the family? I clenched my fists. Sarah had put her in this position. She had turned my own daughter into an accomplice to her lies. And I would never forgive her for that. That night, I lay in bed next to Sarah, unable to sleep. She was sound asleep, breathing evenly, completely unaware that I was lying there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing exactly what she had done. I wanted to grab my keys, walk out, and never look back. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to be smart about this. I needed a plan. One thing was clear, I wasn't going to be the fool in this story. I wasn't going to be the guy who found out about his cheating wife and just let it happen. No. Sarah had made her choices. Now, I was going to make mine. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Sarah. Not yet. Confronting her now would only give her time to spin the story, to play the victim, to try and gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. No. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. The next morning, I got up as usual. Same routine. Shower. Coffee. Kiss on the cheek from the wife who had just spent the night sleeping next to the man she was betraying. It took everything in me not to recoil from her touch. As I grabbed my keys, I turned to Lily, who was eating her cereal at the kitchen table. "Hey, kiddo," I said casually. "I might have to work late tonight. You gonna be okay?" She shrugged. "Yeah." I nodded. "Mom's picking you up, right?" Another hesitation. Brief, but it was there. "Yeah." I didn't push it. Just grabbed my keys and walked out the door. But I wasn't going to work. Instead, I drove to the motel. I parked in a spot far from the entrance, where I had a clear view of the lot. Then, I waited. And sure enough, a couple of hours later, Sarah's car pulled in. I gritted my teeth as I watched her park in the same damn spot as before. A few minutes later, Ryan walked out of the motel room, stretching like he'd just had the best nap of his life. He leaned against the railing, checking his phone. Then, Sarah stepped out of the car, smiling up at him like he was the best thing to ever happen to her. They disappeared into the motel room. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My chest burned with rage, betrayal, and something else I didn't want to admit, pain. But I didn't move. I just pulled out my phone and started recording. It was nearly an hour before she came out again. She looked refreshed, hair slightly messy, her clothes adjusted like she had just, well, I don't need to spell it out. I kept recording. She kissed Ryan goodbye, got into her car, and drove off. I waited until he left too before I finally exhaled the breath I didn't realize I was holding. Then, I played the video back. There it was. The proof I needed. And just like that, everything changed. Because now, this wasn't just my heartbreak. This was evidence. And Sarah had no idea what was coming. I sat in my truck for a long time after she left. Just staring at the screen, watching the video over and over again, as if some part of me still needed convincing. As if I could somehow make it make sense. But there was no making sense of it. Sarah was cheating. Not just a fling, not just a moment of weakness. This was planned. This was routine. This was intentional. I had proof. Now, I just had to decide what to do with it. That night, when I got home, I felt like I was walking through a dream. Or a nightmare. Sarah was already there, standing at the stove, stirring a pot of pasta like she was the perfect wife, like she wasn't just getting out of some cheap motel room a few hours ago. She turned and smiled at me. "Hey, you hungry? I made your favorite." Her favorite. That's what it was. Not mine. I forced a smile. Yeah. Smells great. I needed to play this smart. If she suspected anything, if she got even the slightest hint that I knew, she'd start covering her tracks. She'd get defensive, twist things around, maybe even find a way to turn Lily against me. So, I played along. I sat at the dinner table, eating food made by the woman who had stabbed me in the back, making small talk like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. And the worst part? Lily. She barely spoke during dinner. Just pushed her food around with her fork, eyes downcast. I watched her carefully. She wasn't just distracted. She wasn't just tired. She was withholding something. I set my fork down. "How was school?" She shrugged. "Fine." I glanced at Sarah, who was focused on her plate. "Mom pick you up?" Another pause. Another small, nearly imperceptible hesitation. "Yeah." Sarah looked up and smiled, completely oblivious to the tension in the air. We stopped for ice cream. I told her not to spoil her dinner, but you know how kids are. She chuckled. Lily gave a weak smile. But I saw it. She was lying to me. Again. My own daughter, sitting right across from me, was covering for her mother. And I wasn't sure if it was out of fear or loyalty. Either way, it felt like a knife to the gut. Later that night, after Sarah went to bed, I stayed up in the living room, sipping on a beer, staring at my phone. The video of her and Ryan played on repeat, the images burning into my brain. I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, my fingers itching to send it to her right then and there, to make her see that the game was up. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to prepare. I needed to plan my escape. Because the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to fight for this marriage. I wasn't going to beg her to explain, to fix it, to work through it. No. I was done. And soon, she would realize just how badly she fucked up. The next few days were torture. Every morning, I got up, kissed my wife on the cheek like nothing had changed, and went to work. Every night, I came home, had dinner with my family, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was counting down the days until I was free. I had already started making moves. First, I reached out to an old buddy in Daytona Beach. We hadn't talked in a while, but I knew he had connections. He ran a small business and was always looking for reliable employees. One phone call, and he was offering me a job on the spot. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well enough for a fresh start. Next, I started looking at apartments. I wasn't planning on taking anything with me, just a suitcase and my truck. I wanted to disappear from Sarah's life as fast as possible. Let her wake up one day and realize I was gone. She had no idea. She still kissed me in the morning. She still texted me during the day, acting like the loving wife. And I still played along, even as I watched her car pull into that damn motel lot every few days. I had more than enough proof now. The video. Screenshots of her texts, yes, I checked her phone one night while she was in the shower. Messages with Ryan. Sweet little nothings. Plans for their next meetup. Him telling her he couldn't wait to feel her again. I almost broke my phone when I read that one. But I held it together. Because I had to. Because soon, she was going to lose everything. One night, I sat in the garage, staring at my packed suitcase. It was real now. I was leaving. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not my friends. Not my family. Not even Lily. That part still made my stomach twist. I didn't know what to do about her. She was my daughter, my baby girl. But she had known. She had known what her mother was doing, and she had said nothing. Did I take her with me? Did I even want to take her with me? I had no answers. And I didn't have time to figure them out. Because Thanksgiving was coming up. And that's when everything would explode. Thanksgiving. The last one I would ever spend with Sarah. She had no idea, of course. As far as she was concerned, everything was normal. She was playing the role of the devoted wife, planning the dinner, inviting family over, making sure everything was perfect. Except she made one major mistake. She invited him. Ryan. She didn't say his name, of course. She just casually mentioned that she had invited a friend from work. Someone who didn't have anywhere else to go for the holiday. I nearly laughed when she said it. The audacity of this woman. She was bringing her affair partner into our home. Sitting him at our table. Letting him eat food that I paid for, under the same roof where I had spent over a decade building a life for our family. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was about disrespect. Sarah didn't just betray me, she thought I was too stupid to figure it out. And that? That I couldn't forgive. So, I played along. I told her it was a great idea. Smiled. Acted like the loving husband. But inside? I was counting down the hours until I burned everything to the ground. Thanksgiving Day. Family started arriving in the early afternoon. Sarah was in full hostess mode, greeting everyone with hugs, making sure drinks were in hand, keeping up appearances. Lily sat quietly on the couch, phone in her hand, barely acknowledging the chaos around her. And then he arrived. Ryan. The moment he walked through the door, I felt something snap inside me. He was comfortable. Too comfortable. Like he belonged here. Like he had been in my house before. And judging by the way Sarah's eyes lit up when she saw him, he had. That was it. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to wait until after the holidays. I wasn't going to be quiet about this. No. This was happening tonight. Dinner went by in a blur. I barely tasted the food. My mind was too busy rehearsing what I was about to do. Sarah laughed at his jokes. Leaned in a little too close when she passed him a dish. Stole little glances, thinking I wouldn't notice. I noticed everything. And then I stood up. Cleared my throat. Raised my glass. Everyone, I just want to say a few words. Sarah smiled, completely oblivious. Ryan smirked. Lily looked nervous. Good. Because this was about to be a Thanksgiving none of them would ever. The room went quiet. Every pair of eyes turned to me, waiting for my little Thanksgiving speech. Sarah smiled, probably expecting some sappy husband moment, some "I'm so grateful for my wonderful wife" bullshit. She had no idea. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch. The tension thickened, but Sarah still looked relaxed, completely unaware of the storm about to hit her. I looked directly at Ryan. The bastard was smirking. That's what did it. That smug, self-satisfied look, like he had already won. Like he had gotten one over on me, like I was just some dumb husband who couldn't put two and two together. So, I smiled right back. I want to start by saying how thankful I am, I began, keeping my voice steady. For family. For loyalty. For honesty. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lily tense. Sarah kept smiling, but something in her expression shifted, just a flicker of unease. Good. I'm especially thankful, I continued, turning my gaze back to Ryan, for the new friendships that have come into our lives. It's always great to meet people who truly make a lasting impression. Ryan's smirk faltered, just a little. Sarah's grip on her wine glass tightened. I let that hang for a moment before I set my glass down and reached for my phone. Since we're all here together, I thought it'd be a great time to share some memories. I tapped my screen, and the video started playing. Loud. Crystal clear. Sarah. Ryan. That motel parking lot. Sarah laughing. Sarah kissing him. Sarah walking into that motel room with him. The air was sucked out of the room. Forks clattered onto plates. Someone gasped. My mother-in-law's face went pale. And Sarah? She froze. Completely still, like a deer caught in headlights. Ryan? The cocky bastard went white as a sheet. His mouth opened, then closed, like he was trying to form words but couldn't. Lily put her hands over her face. Sarah finally snapped out of it, reaching for my phone like she could somehow stop the footage that was already burned into everyone's memory. Jake, she started, her voice panicked. I yanked my hand back before she could touch me. Don't. You. Dare. She flinched. Silence. Then, I let out a short laugh, cold, bitter. You know, Sarah, I was gonna wait until after the holidays. Give you a little more time to keep up this pathetic act. But since you went ahead and invited your boyfriend to our Thanksgiving dinner, I figured, why not? My father-in-law looked furious. My mother-in-law just sat there, shaking her head, staring at Sarah like she had never seen her before. Ryan pushed back from the table like he was about to leave, but I wasn't done. Sit down. I growled. And for the first time that night, he looked scared. Good. Ryan sat back down. He didn't want to, but the weight of every set of eyes on him, burning, judging, kept him glued to the chair. He looked like a trapped animal, shifting uncomfortably, glancing toward the door like he was debating making a run for it. Sarah, though. She was still in shock. She wasn't crying. Not yet. That would come later. Right now, she was processing. Processing the fact that I knew. That her parents knew. That our daughter knew. That there was no coming back from this. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my voice calm. Too calm. You thought I didn't know, huh? I asked her, tilting my head. Thought I was just some dumb, oblivious husband? That you could sneak around with this piece of shit and I'd never figure it out? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to Lily, as if hoping our daughter would defend her, would save her. But Lily? She wasn't looking at her mother. She was staring at her lap, eyes red, lips pressed tight together. Because she knew. She had known. And now, she knew that I knew. Sarah swallowed hard. Jake, No, I cut her off. You don't get to talk. Not yet. You had months to talk. Months to be honest. Months to end this before it got to this point. But you didn't, did you? She shook her head, eyes welling up. Please, not here. Not in front of everyone. I let out a cold laugh. Oh, I think this is the perfect place. You made your choices, Sarah. You snuck around, you lied, you betrayed me, and you brought your side piece into my house. You don't get privacy anymore. Ryan shifted in his seat, clearing his throat. Look, man. I snapped my head toward him so fast he flinched. You. Shut the fuck up. Silence. The tension in the room was suffocating. Sarah's father, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke, his voice low and filled with disgust. Is this true? He asked Sarah. Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came out. My mother-in-law covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head. Ryan must have realized just how deep he was in, because he suddenly pushed back from the table, standing up. I should go. I smirked. Yeah. Run. That's what cowards do, right? He didn't respond. He just grabbed his coat and all but sprinted for the door. Sarah watched him go, looking lost, looking desperate. And then, the dam finally broke. She turned to me, eyes wide, pleading. Jake, please. I was going to end it. I swear. I made a mistake. I let that hang in the air for a moment before speaking. A mistake? I echoed. No, Sarah. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something you don't mean in an argument. A mistake isn't months of sneaking around, lying to your husband, and fucking another man in motel rooms. Her face crumbled. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I stood up, grabbing my phone and my keys. You don't love me, I said, my voice flat. You love what I provided. You love what we had. But you sure as hell didn't love me enough to stay faithful. Tears streamed down her face. Please, don't do this. I turned toward Lily, who still hadn't looked at her mother. Get your coat, kiddo. Her head snapped up. What? We're leaving. Sarah gasped. No, Jake, no. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I'll send you the divorce papers. Then, I looked at Lily. You coming or not? She stared at me, torn. And in that moment, I realized something, she was afraid to choose. Because she knew choosing me meant leaving her mother behind. Lily didn't move. She just sat there, frozen, looking back and forth between me and Sarah. I could see it written all over her face, fear. Not fear of me. Fear of choosing. Because she knew that once she did, there was no going back. Sarah reached for her, voice shaking. Lily, sweetheart, please. Lily flinched. That was all it took. I saw it. Sarah saw it. That tiny, instinctive reaction, like she didn't want to be touched. Like she wasn't sure she trusted her mother anymore. Sarah's face crumbled, and I knew, in that moment, she realized just how much she had damaged her own daughter. Lily's voice was small. Where are we going? Away from here, I said. That's all you need to know right now. She swallowed hard, glancing at Sarah one last time. Then she stood up. And that was it. She had chosen. Sarah let out a choked sob, reaching for her. No, Lily, please. Lily stepped back. That broke her. Sarah collapsed into a chair, her hands gripping her hair, sobbing like her whole world had just shattered. And maybe it had. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. I turned toward the rest of the table, where Sarah's parents, her siblings, and the rest of the family still sat in stunned silence. This was supposed to be a Thanksgiving dinner, I said, voice cold. But instead, it turned into Sarah's final performance. No one spoke. Sarah's father just shook his head at her in disgust. My mother-in-law looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. I nodded, satisfied. Good luck, Sarah. You're gonna need it. Then I grabbed Lily's hand, led her to the door, and we walked out. For good. We didn't go home. Home didn't exist anymore. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. Away from the house I had built. Away from the life I thought was mine. Lily sat quietly in the passenger seat, staring out the window. After a while, she spoke. I'm sorry. I glanced at her. For what? She swallowed. For not telling you. I exhaled slowly, gripping the wheel. How long did you know? She hesitated. A couple of months. I nodded, my jaw tightening. Months. That meant she had watched it happen. She had heard the lies. She had sat across from me at dinner, knowing what Sarah was doing behind my back. But she hadn't said a word. I wanted to be angry. Hell, I was angry. But then I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw what I had been too blind to see before. Lily hadn't been covering for Sarah because she was loyal to her. She had been scared. Scared that if she told me, I'd fall apart. Scared that if she spoke up, she'd be the one to break our family. What she didn't realize was that Sarah had already done that. I took a deep breath. I wish you would have told me. But I get why you didn't. She nodded, looking down at her hands. I just didn't want to lose both of you. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You're not losing me. Ever. She didn't say anything. Just squeezed back. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost everything. We drove for a long time, neither of us saying much. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy, like we were both carrying the weight of everything that had just happened. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't go back home. That house wasn't mine anymore. It was just a shell, filled with broken promises and a woman who had thrown everything away for a cheap thrill. Lily finally broke the silence. What now? I exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel. That was the question, wasn't it? We start over, I said. I've got a plan. She turned to look at me. You do? I nodded. Yeah. I've got a job lined up in Florida. I was gonna wait a little longer, but, after tonight, I don't see a reason to stick around. Her eyes widened. You're moving. I glanced at her. We're moving. If you want to come with me. She stared at me for a long moment. And Mom? I clenched my jaw. Mom made her choice. Lily looked down at her lap, playing with the hem of her sweater. She's gonna be mad. Good, I said. She deserves to be mad. She deserves to be miserable. She didn't say anything after that. And for a while, we just drove. I finally pulled into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, just a dingy little place with flickering neon lights and a parking lot that smelled like burnt coffee and cigarettes. But it was enough for the night. We checked in, and Lily collapsed onto one of the beds without a word. I sat on the edge of mine, staring at my phone. Sarah had called 16 times. I ignored every single one. Instead, I sent her a single text. We're safe. Don't call again. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed again. Sarah, Jake, please. We need to talk. Please don't do this. I turned my phone off. I wasn't playing her games anymore. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Lily in the shower. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and checked my phone. More missed calls. More texts. And then, one from Sarah's father. I don't blame you for leaving. But don't punish Lily because of her mother. Think this through. I frowned. Lily wasn't being punished. She was coming with me, if she wanted to. But that text told me one thing, Sarah was panicking. She had lost control of the narrative. She couldn't lie her way out of this one. And that? That was the best damn feeling I'd had in a long time. When Lily came out of the bathroom, her hair still damp, she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at me. Do you think she'll try to stop us? She asked. I sighed. She might. She bit her lip. I don't want to stay with her. I met her eyes. Are you sure? She nodded. And just like that, the decision was made. We were leaving. Sarah could cry. She could beg. She could throw every excuse in the book at me. It wouldn't change a damn thing. Because Lily had chosen. And soon, Sarah would realize just how badly she had fucked up. Lily had chosen. And that meant Sarah had lost. I could almost picture her at home, pacing the floor, crying, making up excuses in her head about why this wasn't her fault. Maybe she was telling herself that I had manipulated Lily, that I had turned her against her own mother. That's what cheaters do, right? They rewrite history. Make themselves the victim. I wasn't going to give her the chance. I grabbed my phone and sent one final text to Sarah. Lily is coming with me. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. I wasn't interested in whatever speech she had rehearsed. We packed up, checked out of the motel, and hit the road. A few hours into the drive, I stopped for gas. As I stepped out to fill up the tank, Lily stayed in the car, scrolling through her phone. That's when I saw the cop car pull into the lot. And my stomach dropped. The officer stepped out, adjusted his belt, and started walking straight toward me. I knew before he even opened his mouth. Sarah had called the police. "Sir," the officer said, nodding politely. "Can I have a word with you?" I forced a calm breath. "Sure, officer. What's the problem?" He glanced at my truck, then back at me. "We got a report of a possible parental kidnapping. The mother claims her daughter was taken without consent." I closed my eyes for half a second. Of course she did. I shook my head, already pulling out my wallet. "That's not what happened." I handed him my ID. Then, I pulled out Lily's birth certificate. I had prepared for this. She's my daughter. I have every legal right to take her with me. The officer looked over the documents, then nodded. "And the girl, she's with you willingly?" Instead of answering, I turned to the truck and motioned for Lily to roll down the window. She hesitated, but did it. The officer leaned down, his tone softer now. "Hey there. Your mom called us. She's worried about you. You doing okay?" Lily swallowed. Then, in a quiet but firm voice, she said, "I don't want to go back to her." That was all it took. The officer sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right. I just had to check." I nodded. "I get it." He handed me back my documents and took a step back. "You're free to go. But just so you know, she might try again." "I figured," I muttered. He gave me a look like he'd seen this 1,000 times before. "Good luck." Then he walked back to his cruiser, got in, and drove off. I turned back to Lily. She was staring straight ahead, hands gripping her phone. "She really called the cops on us," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "She did." She was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't hear it, she asked, "Do you think she ever really loved us?" That one hurt. I didn't know how to answer. Because I didn't know the truth anymore. So I just said, "I love you. That's all that matters now." She nodded. And for the first time all day, she smiled. We got back on the road. Sarah had played her last card. And she had lost. The miles stretched behind us, putting more and more distance between us and the wreckage of my old life. Every mile felt like a weight lifting off my chest. Every sign on the highway was another step toward freedom. Lily fell asleep somewhere around Georgia. I glanced over at her, curled up in the passenger seat, hoodie pulled up, arms wrapped around herself. She looked peaceful for the first time in a long time. I knew this wasn't easy for her. She had left behind her friends, her school, and, no matter how badly Sarah had screwed up, her mother. But she had made her choice. And I was going to make damn sure she never regretted it. By the time we crossed into Florida, I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket again. I ignored it. I already knew who it was. Sarah had been calling non-stop since the cops let us go. At first, it was texts. Desperate, pleading messages. Jake, please, let's talk. We can fix this. I'm sorry, I was stupid. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. This doesn't have to be the end. Then, when I didn't respond, the messages got angrier. You're a monster for taking my daughter away from me. You're brainwashing her. She doesn't know what she's doing. You're ruining our family. Our family. Like she hadn't been the one to tear it apart. I shook my head and turned off my phone. I had nothing left to say to her. We pulled into Daytona Beach late that night. I had already arranged a short-term rental, a small, furnished apartment near the coast. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. The moment we stepped inside, Lily let out a breath and flopped onto the couch. It's not bad, she said. I smirked. Not bad. She shrugged, but I caught the tiny smile on her face. I walked over and sat beside her. You sure you're okay? She hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. I think so. I exhaled slowly. It's not gonna be easy, kid. It's a fresh start. New school, new place. But I promise you, we're gonna be okay. She looked up at me, and this time, her smile was real. I know. The next morning, I finally checked my phone. The messages had stopped. Instead, there was just one. From Sarah. I hope you're happy. You'll regret this. I stared at it for a long time. And then, I laughed. Because for the first time in months, I felt free. It's been 6 months. 6 months since I walked out of that house. 6 months since Sarah tried to play the victim. 6 months since she watched me take Lily and realized that she had lost everything. And let me tell you, she's miserable. I heard through the grapevine that things haven't been going too well for her. Ryan. The guy she threw our marriage away for. He's long gone. Apparently, the moment he realized that Sarah wasn't some secret mistress anymore, that she came with real baggage, real consequences, he bailed. No more motel meetups. No more sneaking around. No more thrill. Just a single, broken woman with nothing left to hide behind. Her job. She still has it. But the rumors destroyed her reputation. See, small towns don't forget. People talk. And once word got around that she brought her affair partner to Thanksgiving dinner, her co-workers lost all respect for her. The funny thing? I never even had to tell anyone. Her own family turned on her. Her dad won't even look at her. Her mother is embarrassed to show her face at church. Her siblings barely talk to her anymore. She called me once, about a month ago. I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, she whispered, I miss you. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not an angry one. Just pure amusement. Yeah. I said. That's too bad. And then I hung up. She hasn't called since. As for me, I'm thriving. The job in Florida has been good. I wake up every morning and breathe in the ocean air, and for the first time in years, I feel alive. Lily? She's doing great. New school, new friends, new life. It took some time, but she's happier now. She doesn't talk about her mother much, and I don't push. But I know she's at peace with her choice. And as for relationships, I'm taking it slow. No rush. No pressure. Just living my life on my own terms. Sarah. She watches from the sidelines. She sees the pictures Lily posts. She hears about how well we're doing. And every time, she knows she did this to herself. She could have had a loyal husband. A happy family. Everything. Instead, she has nothing. And me? I have freedom. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.